2, 1.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for Redefining Your Business, Innovate Your Insurance Processes to Unlock New Sources of Revenue with Tech. I would like to say a really quick thank you to Reuters Events for putting on today's event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Franklin of InsurTech 360 and Chief Innovation Officer with CareBridge International. I have spent my entire career building products and solutions that leverage people, process, technology, and data to transform the customer experience. When we look at where we are today, I think it's more evident than ever before that the parameters around what it means to redefine your business are incredibly broad. Friction across the industry, across the value chain, driven by legacy technology, antiquated workflows and processes, and a poor customer experience really continues to have a negative impact on the industry. I think when we look at 2021, it will be defined not only by the steps companies take to address some of these challenges, but also how they respond to new customer expectations within the industry. So what steps can we take towards not only redefining your business, but also reimagining the insurance and the customer experience? I have with me today an absolutely fantastic panel, bringing together a wealth of knowledge across innovation, technology, and customer experience. And we'll be diving into really what it means to kind of pivot around a digital claims operating model, responding to new customer expectations, and how can we tackle as an industry these issues around friction? How can we look at smart and innovative technology and use it to transform the customer experience? So as you can see, we are joined by Martha Frye, the SVP of Personal Lines Claims at Nationwide. We also have Gary Smith, the VP of Sales and Strategy and Industries at Blue Prism. And I'm also delighted to have Tom Warden, the SVP, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Employer. So welcome all of you. Thank you for joining today's really kind of informative and exciting discussion. The way we'll run this today, our panelists are going to kind of walk through and talk a little bit about their experiences and backgrounds within the industry. Martha, we'll be starting with you. I'm going to read a quick bio. Martha is an inspirational and strategic leader with over 30 years of leadership experience in insurance and financial services. Known for courageous decision-making and delivering challenging results in a team environment, Martha has worked with great leaders at Nationwide, GE, and KPMG in multiple disciplines, including finance, strategy, and business operations. Outside of work, Martha passionately supports causes that support the elderly and help families repair their lives. She bleeds Duke blue and tries to never miss a home game. When in need of a break at work or on the basketball court, Martha recharges. So Martha, welcome today. Thank you for joining us. I would like to kind of kick off by asking you a question. How does a company like Nationwide, known for its on your side brand, pivot to a digital claims operating model and still deliver a personal care experience?
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. I'm glad to be here and welcome everyone. I love talking about the Nationwide On Your Side promise, and I think that it really embodies that empathetic person-to-person interaction, which is one of the most important aspects of claim handling, especially when someone has something unfortunate happen to them and they're in a bad situation. They really want empathy and care, and that's really core to us at Nationwide, and our mission is really to protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. And so we're very focused on that extraordinary care, and in claims it's very connected to that empathy. And we're investing in ways to connect our people to customers through technology. And I think that's a really important point, is that we connect the people through the technology, and not that our people are replaced by technology. So we really are trying to use technology to ensure that we can still keep that personal care and keep that empathy delivered. And we're doing that in several ways. But first and most importantly is we're examining the entire claims process, really end to end through the lens of the customer journey, and finding innovative ways to digitize and simplify that journey. And truly this is informing everything that we do, that outside in look from the customer at what we're doing and how they experience us. So these innovations that we're investing in, and these technologies we're investing in, have been big and small. And I'll just use a couple of examples. The first one is an investment in conversational texting. And while that may sound small, and we've seen that capability enable us to really connect our people and have it be people connected and technology enabled, which is really our philosophy at Nationwide. It may seem small, but it's actually been a huge advantage for us, because in 2020 we released conversational texting that enables that customer to connect directly with their assigned claims representative from their smartphone. And we've seen other carriers and other companies sending automated text. Sometimes folks, really feel that they are talking to someone other than a person, like a computer, but we're really endeavoring to have this be our claims adjuster that they're speaking with. And we've really taken it a step forward so that the customer can initiate that two-way dialogue directly with their adjuster. And if customer has questions, they can just text us. And we bought, and someone smarter than me long ago, bought CLAIMS as our number for texting. So we are using that, and folks can opt in and really talk to their adjuster, and we're finding people are really doing that significantly in the claims process. We've gotten more than 5,500 texts a month, and that number is growing constantly. And we just released recently the ability for customers to add a photo or other information, and it's just been a great advancement for us. And it seems small, and it was a small investment, but it's been big for our customers to be able to interact with their smartphone, as we know, everyone wants to do. And it's just been a great way to have faster, easier digital experience as well. But we've also enabled our customers and associates in a lot of other ways. But I do think it's really important that we make sure, again, that that's customer informed. And I think it's important that we make sure that our associates really know how to use these tools, and that they experience it like a customer would experience it, and that we give them really great tools to keep them as productive and efficient as they can, so they have time to really focus on that personal care with our customers. So just one example of what we're doing to bring that people-centric, on your site experience to life, and really make sure that customers can reach someone and get that empathy as quick as possible with texting, conversational texting in this case.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. And I love that you placed so much emphasis around empathy and care, right? And it's, I think when, as an industry, we have an opportunity to really help people, through still a very difficult and challenging time, right? Where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of fear about what's even coming this year. And I think, when I think about building products and solutions for the insurance industry, it is always through that compassionate lens, right? I mean, how do we use technology? How do we use, how do we work more effectively as a community to kind of deliver products and solutions that help our customer? And and I think those examples are fantastic. And I think the ability to connect more effectively with your customer is wonderful. So another quick question for you. So when we think about claims automation, and what ways are you using data and technology to streamline that claims process to kind of a faster, simpler experience to your customers?
Yeah, it's a a great topic today, very timely, especially with COVID in place, to find ways to streamline things for your customer is so critical, because they're, you know, like us, on Zoom meetings all day long and using a lot of technology. So we want to make sure that we really deliver a fast and simple experience for customers. And one of the things we've heard from customers is that they get it, right? They get that the experience should match the degree of the claim or the degree of the incident or unfortunate event. So when something is fairly simple, then they expect us to respond with a pretty simple process. And so it's not just about trying to take out your simple, less complex claims and automate those. It's about meeting their expectations around a simpler experience and a fast experience when something is relatively minor. And so we are using automation and photos to do just that. So in June, we introduced some new automation using a data and analytics model. This model is a smart model. It gets smarter and smarter all the time as it iterates, and it takes in at a casualty event for simple, you know, single car accidents that go directly and enables us to go directly to from first notice of loss to the MD adjuster, so that the material damage or the physical damage can be handled right away without going through a person to kind of determine what the casualty event is and who's at fault and that kind of thing. So as the automation processes these events, the artificial intelligence is running in the background and constantly runs real time, constantly getting smarter, and determines, clears the coverage decision and determines the liability. And that way, if the coverage is cleared and everything is ready to go, it can just skip through that normal personal casualty experience and take someone straight to a repair event and get that taken care of quickly. So it just creates, again, that faster, low effort experience for the customer or claimant. We also put in MD automation. So again, physical damage is automated, where we use artificial intelligence in the claims process when we have minor damage. So if the policyholder has an estimate at first notice of loss and the nature of the claim qualifies for this, it would just go right through a material damage estimate model. It would look at all of the data points on the vehicle. It would estimate the specific requirements for everything from the DOI reporting requirements to all of the required documents we need to get to the customer, and it would be completely no touch. And on average, we're getting those from FNOL to payment in less than 3 days. And so really speedy experience. Again, customers expect that when it's a simple matter. So trying to make sure that we're automating the right events from that customer point of view. And just one last example I'll give, since we're talking about data and analytics, which has been so powerful in running these models. Our partnership with our model factory inside of Nationwide has been fantastic. We're also automating the rental experience, which can really be a pain point for customers, where their rental is set for a certain time period based on the damage, and then it needs to be extended. You get into all of the weekend noise, and it can be a real hassle for a customer. And so we're automating an estimate of how long their rental will go, and we have automated communication that's feeding into the AI model around the state of repair for the automobile, and automatically extending rentals without, the customer needing to call in and get their rental extended, and the rental car calling them and us calling around, and just creating a lot of back and forth for folks, especially now with COVID, and there's so much going on, and people are so they have so much stressful things to deal with. Hassling with your rental car is not something we want to do with our customers. So again, I think looking at all of this through the eyes of the customer is so critical, and thinking through how you match up your experience to what their expectations are.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely terrific. And I think when we look at how companies have responded and how we need to continue responding, right, it is this kind of proactive versus reactive capability that we all need to think about and build within our organizations. And one last very quick question. I mean, how were you able to respond so so quickly to these, to kind of this new customer expectation coming out of COVID, creating this safe remote claim handling experience?
Well, thanks to our great IT department, we were in excellent shape with our desktop capabilities and all of our remote work capabilities. So we were able to send literally 100% nearly of our, I think we have like a small tiny fraction of our associates still in the office that are tied to the office. The overwhelming majority of associates went home quickly, and due to a lot of investments in technology to enable handling the on-site estimate and adjustment process, we've invested in those. We were able to actually put them to use, and it's just fascinating to see how that need drove the use of those tools. So many of them were in place, and we were continually improving them, but we frankly were using them in less than 5% of our claims using some type of remote estimate, remote settlement process. And today we're using that in over 50%. And so it was need driven. We needed to do that for the good of our customers. They wanted to be safe, and for the good of our associates. We wanted to keep them safe. And so we just moved rapidly to, no travel, and only went out in person when it was totally safe to do so and the customer wanted us there. But one of the things we have done is invest with Hover. In November, Nationwide announced a venture capital investment with Hover, which uses photos. I'm sure you can imagine with a name like Hover there, and most people are familiar with them. They are able to use the capture of 3D models for roof and exterior elevations, and take care of that really without having to interact with the customer, go in, talk to them, get ladder people out or people up on roofs or other measurement methods, and again, just really speed our way through any kind of homeowner claim. And that's been a tremendous result for us. We've been piloting that technology since 2019 and have used it in over 48,000 claims since the beginning of the pandemic. Wow. And it's just remote technologies like that, and I could go on and on with examples of the things that InsurTechs are doing and the partnerships that we have with our venture capital team to work with them. But that kind of remote handling technology has really been the key to our meeting the needs of our customers during this time and keeping them safe and keeping our associates safe.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Martha, for sharing those thoughts. I think, as we heard, kind of people, process, technology, and data through a compassionate lens. I mean, I think that's kind of what we're seeing, where we're seeing the industry move. Thanks again. So kind of moving to a technology slant and perspective. I would like to welcome again Gary Smith from Blue Prism. Gary is a strategic thinker helping visionary corporate leaders implement, operationalize, and monetize a digital labor force to transform the way they deliver for their customers and dramatically improve shareholder value. Gary specializes in new business development, account management, managing complex sales opportunities, negotiating large-scale deals, coaching teams, building trust, and aligning strategic business goals with technology services and solutions. And Gary, welcome today. Before we dive in, I would like to remind the listeners to please submit via chat any questions that you have for the panelists. We'll have time at the end of this. We'll have about 20 minutes to half an hour to answer any questions that you have. So please bring the questions forwards as you continue to listen. So Gary, welcome. I would like to kick off with you. Blue Prism obviously are doing some really wonderful work across the insurance space, really kind of tackling a lot of the things that Martha talked about around rethinking process design, looking at legacy processes and so forth, and kind of thinking about the future state of the insurance industry. The first question to you, Gary, what do you see as the biggest threats to the insurance industry today?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and I appreciate being here. It's an exciting opportunity. Yeah, the big threats that we're seeing out there, and this is a combination of our insurance clients telling us this, as well as certainly our observations, really revolve around probably the biggest threat is insurtech as we see it, right? It's changing the game up a little bit. I think it's certainly levering the benefit of two generations that are arriving, millennials and Gen Z. And in the one case, you have a pure digital native. In the other case, you've got most of the generation is digital native. And so a lot of things that have been coming out of insurance, whether they've been maybe somewhat for publicity, right? I'm thinking about what Lemonade did with the fastest claim in the world, right? I think they settled a $700 claim in a few minutes, and that was certainly interesting. But what this all points toward, I think, is changing the construct of the game. So I think for the traditional insurers, that's certainly something that they've got to keep in mind and respond to. As Martha was describing, I think Nationwide sounds like they've been quite responsive to that, and good for them, because that's really where I think part of the game is being fought. The other side of that coin is, I think the insurtechs, the threats that maybe that they'll settle in with are that their efficiency and the fact that they've got maybe a slightly more simplified model because they don't have the legacy that's holding them back, or that they have to overcome that type of inertia. That efficiency comes at the expense, I think, of certainly maybe the empathy that Martha talked about, right? That delighting of a customer experience. It can be very clinical in terms of its execution. The other thing that we see as emerging is the data set that's available, and the understanding that the traditional insurers have. It's vast, and that factors into so many different things, from what you can pump through an AI model, right? In terms of if you are bringing a digital labor source to the forefront and you're imbuing it with AI capabilities, all of that data goes to building the model and helping that model really become quite effective. The other piece of that is, as the traditional line insurers are onboarding digital labor, a genuine digital labor source, one of the other risks that we see is that it's widely regarded as a technology initiative. And Blue Prism's point of view is it is not. It is truly an operational model consideration of where does the division of labor occur, how does the labor get reworked, right? A digital worker, we have the notion of something called the digital twin in Blue Prism, and it's literally what it sounds like. It's having a junior digital underwriter, if you will, or digital claims center assistant helping a human laborer. What's the interaction between those two? How is that governed? What needs to occur? And so that level of engagement and that addition, you had used a great term, Chris, around people, process, technology, and data. Our view is very similar. In our worldview, it's people, process, technologies, and now a new source of labor known as digital labor. So those are really some of the things that we're seeing and helping organizations work through. The other thing is I did get myself a little distracted and saw some of the questions going by, and I have a very distractible personality. And one of the questions had asked, how will certain technologies help the employees of insurance companies? And one of the things that we've probably didn't really factor in when we've been doing all the things that we've been doing is we've got a lot of insurance customers telling us, what was really remarkable is we've automated some tasks. It's actually made the job for their human FTEs far more desirable, because it got rid of a lot of things that were just really troublesome, or they weren't tasks that people like doing. And so there's been that added benefit as well. So a lot of different levers to pull on that we've been working through.
Yeah, no, thanks, Gary. And it's interesting. I mean, I've been around insurtech for probably the past 5 or 6 years, and there's always kind of been this. There has always in the past been this kind of mysterious mystique about insurtech. What is it? You know, what is this
Yeah.
this thing that's coming? And it's, you know, it's really about insurance and technology, right? It's taking technology and looking at the customer experience through a tech focused lens. And, you know, how do we rethink the customer journey? How do we rethink what that experience looks like through that kind of design thinking, tech focused lens? And it's not really magic, but it's, you know, it's one of those things that I think companies, you know, when we think about what the insurance company of the future might look like, there are obviously things and components. And Martha, it sounds like you guys are doing this at Nationwide, but you're thinking about all of these different entities, all of these different elements that come together to create and reimagine what typically and traditionally has been quite a fractured customer experience. Gary, one other quick question for you. You know, when we think about that insurance company of the future, you know, yourself and Martha both mentioned this concept of kind of the digital worker. What do you think that company looks like?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. Thank you for that. It's, you know, we see a few different things. You know, I'd referred to the people, process, technology, and then digital work source, right? And that digital work source we see as being intelligent. So we see that having quite a bit of AI around it. We've got a vast constellation of partners. We call them our TAP partners, our technology alliance partners, and they imbue in our digital labor things like computer vision, things like natural language processing and generation, things like just generally having the capability to respond, right? So it takes that, and we see the insurance company of the future really being a third of its human FTEs, about a third coming from digital labor, and a third coming from the systems and data stores that organizations have, and kind of creating this harmonized or synthesized experience of seamless handoff in the operating model between what humans do best, you know, which is interacting with other humans, which is creating things and unleashing innovation for the organization, and really letting a lot of the, maybe some of the more process-oriented tasks or mundane work that humans don't like to do, and let that reside with digital workers. But there's also an opportunity to have those digital workers do more intelligent things using things like machine learning and computer vision to, you know, as Martha had been referencing some of the speed of claims, and I think that's exactly spot on, right? There's a whole way of you know, taking images, whether it's from a drone for damage sustained during a storm on a structure, or maybe it's someone, you know, that's taking a picture or video of their car, they've just been in a fender bender, moving that through, and not even necessarily consuming human bandwidth doing that, but letting the humans do the really difficult exceptions and the complex decision makings. And then I think the other element that we see is we see a big area in regulatory, right? And I think, you know, it's a very different market in the United States. You have 50 different states regulating it. It's no centralized regulatory authority. You know, how do you manage that maybe in a more appropriate manner to create a non-repudiation of how the business is operating, and being able to defend decisions that have been made in claims, whatever those may be. But we also see a claim center of the future where there is absolutely that empathy and warmth, as Martha referenced, in the human contact, but also just being able to churn through any of the things that come in, the easy or maybe lower hanging things, and letting a digital laborer churn away on those.
Yeah, no, thank you. And those are all terrific points, Gary. And I think what, you know, perhaps what really excites me about kind of bringing together people and technology and intelligent workflows, you know, is this opportunity to create the time and the space for our industry, for the people within our industry to spend more time with the customer when they need it, right? And at those, you know, during that claim journey where you need empathy and compassion, they're able to now sit down and have a conversation and be able to kind of guide somebody through that process, but using technology to help them do that more effectively. And I think that's a really exciting thing to kind of consider and think about. Cheers, Gary.
Yeah, thank you,
Tom,
Chris.
moving over to you. So as a reminder, Tom Warden, SVP, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Employers. Tom is an experienced leader of strategy development and innovation across a wide range of problems, currently focused on advising C-suite execs in the use of data and analytics to improve the quality and efficiency of business decisions and creating game-changing business opportunities that leverage data and emerging technologies. Tom, welcome today. And I think your perspective here is incredibly important. When we think about people, process, technology, data is really kind of the piece that I think is the underlying foundation for much of this. I think somebody coined the term, it's the new oil. It's probably more than that. I think it is the foundation. So Tom, kind of looking again at the claims journey, what do you see as kind of the most significant challenges in automating claims handling?
Yeah, I like what Martha said back at the beginning when she said that they're Nationwide's focused on, looking at the claims process through the customer lens, the customer journey. I think in personal lines, that's an incredibly important thing to do. And I applaud Nationwide for doing that. I think I started my career at Allstate, and when many years ago there, I think the claims process in most personal lines companies was not viewed so much that way. It was more about efficiency, cost management, all of that. And I think the personal lines companies, the leaders at least, have really changed their perspective now, and they're focusing more on looking through the customer's eyes. So I think that's great. I work in workers' comp right now. Employers is a monoline workers' comp provider. So our effort in automating claims has started focusing mostly on cost effectiveness, but I'm a firm believer with the technologies and data at hand today that you can improve the customer experience and minimize the cost of handling a claim. In our case, really the objective is to get the worker healed as fast as possible, both for the worker's benefit and for the employer's benefit. So we're all working toward the same objective. And from the perspective of the challenges, I mean, I think there's really two categories. First are all the technical challenges. Martha alluded to her model factory, and there's a lot of really heavy detail work that has to take place behind the scenes to make all this stuff work. If you think about, especially in workers' comp, I mean, most of our information is coming in from medical providers and billing agencies and things like that. It all comes in sort of PDFs or even just mailed bills. So interpreting, scanning, figuring out what information on those documents is related to what claim, what information in the detail of those documents, and as most of it's unstructured data, is relevant to the decision at hand. Should we pay this bill? Should we not? Should we approve this treatment? Should we not? That's really hard stuff. Natural language processing is a huge part of it there. And a lot of those technologies are advanced, but they're not nearly as advanced as they need to be, because it's really understanding the context of the information that's on the document that we really have to get to. So picking out the keywords is the first step, but then understanding, okay, what does that word or that phrase mean in the context of this situation? That's really tough stuff. And that's where a lot of the heavy lifting really is. The other part of it is about developing expert systems of what claims adjusters do. Every company has, sort of the A team, the B team of claims adjusters. And, what we've done is pulled together, our most experienced and our best claims adjusters. We're trying to minimize the amount of time, excuse me, any of them have to spend on routine decisions. So we've spent a lot of time modeling the decision-making process of an adjuster to say, okay, here's a situation we're trying to decide, is this bill payable? The real simple stuff. What data do you need to make that decision? Where does that data come from? when presented with the data, how do you make that decision? And being really specific about modeling the details of all of that. I think that's where a lot of companies kind of may go off the rails, is they forget that they're really trying to make decisions. They're not trying to build models and do all kinds of cool, fancy stuff with AI. That stuff supports the decisions. But if you forget about the fact that you're really trying to make decisions, that's, I think a key part of the process. And then I think managing the data is the other technical challenge. I mean, making sure that the data quality is good in your systems, number one, so that your frontline people taking FNOLs and things like that are entering and coding things properly, and not just skipping through screens to get to the next one because they don't think the piece of information being asked for is really that important or not. Because if you're measuring them on the clock, they're going to take shortcuts. And really making sure that all of your systems at every level are aligned around making sure the data quality is right, and then figuring out how to sync that data flow through the decision-making process. New technologies are involved, rules engines, things like that have to be integrated into your claim systems. It's all really complex stuff. And then finally building those feedback loops that Martha alluded to and Gary alluded to, that the AI, the machine learning is really a big thing that people are looking for here. How do you build those feedback loops into your process so you can monitor the automation, make sure the decisions are being made properly, make adjustments if things are starting to change and go off the rails a little bit, and then continually feeding back that intelligence into those algorithms so they're continually improving. I mean, that's all really difficult stuff. And, I think a lot of C-suite leaders don't quite want to get into that level of detail to understand that's how complicated, affecting some of this stuff is. And it can create conflict. I think on the cultural side, to be successful here, you have to bring together different disciplines. Obviously, your expertise and your claims adjusters is a key part of it. And they're a very proud bunch. They've been doing it for many years. They're known to be the experts, and they are. And you have to treat them appropriately. But at the same time, you're marrying in the IT folks, the process folks, the data scientists, these crazy birds that have PhDs that don't talk languages no one understands supposedly. And that can be a tricky, thing to negotiate. The data scientists sometimes come in and think, oh, our models will solve all the problems. And sometimes I think that's the assumption that a lot of senior leaders have too. It's like, hey, we'll just wave the magic wand of AI at these problems and it'll be solved. And that's not, that's exactly the opposite thing that works. So managing, those egos and how to bring that expertise together and focus it on a common objective is a challenge. I think it requires a special type of leader. I think that, you got to be very deliberate in who you choose to sort of lead your initial efforts here, because if the first efforts aren't successful, then you're probably not going to get to the second, third, fourth effort, because you won't have proven that this stuff works. And I think the final thing, from a cultural perspective is really, it's really about designing the whole system and thinking it through from end to end before you dig in too much. I think there's a tendency to want to start building things, building models, building, recommendation engines or whatever it might be. And that's all well and good. That's kind of the flash of, the sizzle. The steak is really making sure that what you design will be able to work and fit into the architecture you have. I mean, many companies, especially, legacy companies, so to speak, and I mean that in a positive sense of the word, Martha, have a lot of systems that have been around for a long time. And because, having experienced this much of my career, integrating new technologies with those existing systems can be a real challenge. And if you're not thinking through those things up front, you can get yourself into a mess where, you've got some product that some new technologies that show to be very promising, But at the same time, then you go to the IT folks and say, well, that can't work in our system. Why did you build it that way? So really thinking through that end to end, and I mean, that means that really getting all of those folks in the room and working together up front to be very deliberate about how you approach things, I think is another key challenge that you need to overcome.
Tom, thank you for the insight. I think you touched upon kind of a number of kind of critical things there, and I had another question for you, which I think I can just open up to everybody really, because I think the approach is critical, and thinking about a company that's maybe early, fairly early on this automation journey. I call it the automation journey because I think you almost start with kind of the process, understanding what you already have, and then figuring out where you want to be, right? And that where you want to be is perhaps the customer journey mapping, design thinking exercise. So you make sure you're building what the customer really needs and wants, as opposed to building what the technology can do. So I mean, Tom, if you'd like to add a few more thoughts around this piece, but how should a company that's interested in claims automation get started? I mean, where do they start?
Yeah, I think some of the things that Martha and Gary mentioned are very key. Think big, execute small. I mean, as you mentioned, do your big thinking up front. Look at all the areas where automation, if you're able to implement it, could be beneficial, both from the customer's perspective and from the economics perspective. But then when you start to execute, figure out solve some of the simple problems first, the easiest decisions to make. I mean, in our case, especially, I mean, a lot of the time and energy that gets spent on making the simple decisions can compose maybe 60-70% of the decisions that are made in handling a claim. So if you execute against the small things first, number one, you'll demonstrate to the organization that this can be done end to end and it can work. It's not just a great idea. And then you actually might be changing some of the economics sort of in a disproportionate way, because you're focusing on where many of the decisions are made. So I think focusing on the easiest thing, set yourself up for success in your first initiatives. Don't try and solve the biggest, most hairy big problem out there initially. Get to that later. And as I said earlier, I think focusing on the decision, I think that's, again, simple, but it's we've worked with a firm that focuses on this decision management. It's like, what is the decision that you're making? What data do you need? And don't bring anything else to the table. A lot of times people want to, hey, we need all of this different data and like, well, really, how much of it do you really need to make this decision? Oh, we don't really need all of that. We just need this. Well, let's focus on making that work. And I think setting expectations that are reasonable with your leadership is key too. And this can be, a challenge. I mean, my experience, I've been doing this kind of work for a long, long time, is it always takes it longer than anyone really expects. I mean, even after you've done it a few times, you start to underestimate how long it can take. As I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of detailed level of work that has to be done to make this automation process work effectively. And so you've got to be, you got to promise you can get it done to your leadership within a reasonable time, but then you also have to keep them, in a reasonable place too, so that your team can execute against it. IBM's done us a wonderful disservice by saying Watson is magic, and just throw your data into these algorithms and magic happens. I mean, I don't want to pick on IBM, but yeah, I mean, they've done a lot of that. And it's, clouded the vision of a lot of senior leaders to think that this stuff is easier than it really is.
Thank you, Tom. Gary, I'd love to put the same question to you, and I'm sure with Blue Prism, you've seen and encountered a lot of different companies, at various stages of this journey. Somebody getting started, how do they best get going? Yeah,
Chris, it's a great question, because we're finding that it's got to be a C-suite mandated agenda, as Tom was kind of hinting at there, or actually calling out. Without that sponsorship, it just becomes regarded as a typical technology that might be software you load up on a machine. it really kind of, it needs to be baked into the fabric of the company. And thinking of digital workers is just that. It's a source of labor. It's no different than we were arbitraging labor in the 90s by sending jobs over to India, for example, to get a different labor wage, but still very good, high quality work. A digital labor is exactly like that, right? And used under the right circumstances, what we're seeing some of the very best insurers globally doing is they're using digital workers to effectively come in, support and help, as Tom's describing, that speed to decision, right? You can build those into AI models that suddenly compress and flatten down the time to response, so that Lemonade and their world records suddenly doesn't seem so gargantuan of a task to overcome, because you're letting a digital worker do that in the background very, very quickly. And then if it's a real big exception, it would get kicked out, but it'll get kicked out. The decision maybe goes to the human that's interfacing and providing that level of warmth and human to human response. So we see the opportunity there. The other thing that we see as being kind of emerging world class is changing the very fabric of how the work gets done. The way a human works, Tom, a great example, you've got people skipping ahead maybe screens because they're like, this doesn't seem that important, I'll just move ahead. Digital worker doesn't care. It'll do everything. And it will also leave a trail of exactly what it's done. So the auditability is there, and it does it so fast, you don't get penalized for it. But even just taking the work and kind of breaking it down, you may be able to do things in a different way that humans need to do things serially, and it has to make sense. A digital laborer can do things out of sequence. It can do things in a very, very different manner that makes the human more efficient. We kind of view that as being a great way to change the business. And again, this is part of the reason that it's so important that the C-suite is fully engaged in that type of a transformative agenda.
Thank you, Gary. And Martha, I'll put the same question to you. I mean, how did Nationwide get started on this journey? And I'll throw out a couple of other terms. I mean, thinking about kind of a center of excellence. I mean, are these things that Nationwide kind of put together early on? How did that journey kind of get started for you and take shape?
Yeah, so in regards to data and analytics and kind of modeling, definitely a center of excellence has emerged. And I think too, with working through that Tom's points about having the whole team at the table and being clear about what decisions you're making is so so relevant. We use an agile process. We have everyone at the table from excuse me, the people that know the claims adjustment process best, the experts that Tom referenced. They are quite expert in this arena. They understand all of claims end to end, and they understand the decisions and the ramifications of those decisions from a regulatory perspective or a customer perspective, et cetera. And bringing them together with the technologist and with the data and analytics team, if that's applicable to the effort, and certainly in so many cases it is just a critical part of it, getting them all in the room in an agile format so that decisions can be made quickly, and getting down to what's really most important in that decision making has been key. And the folks at the table from the model factory, they're bilingual for us, and that's been great. They definitely speak our language, but they definitely do see the things that can be automated that we probably have to pull the reins on a little bit. And so it's really getting folks in the room to really hash it out so that you can make it work. And that center of excellence with that data science capability has been huge for us, and that was absolutely a C-suite mandate, and has been a really powerful thing for us. And I think all of that is true. The other thing that I would just add to what Tom pointed out, so in addition to kind of seconding what he says and what I've seen at Nationwide, is having IT at the table around what can be done, while constantly challenging that with folks that are in the room around what the customer expectation is it is so important that we build it to what customers need and don't just build things that aren't going to meet need. And I think the mandate at Nationwide in this regard really came in two ways. One is a better customer experience, but at a lower cost. I mean, I'll just call out the obvious here. You know, we have to get more efficient, especially in personal lines. As a company, customers expect it. They want a better experience. We need to do that more efficiently. And so finding ways to build a better customer experience at a lower cost has been a huge part of the impetus for us at Nationwide. And I absolutely believe both of those things can happen. It's not a better experience always costs more. You know, there's definitely capital investments to be made, but you can absolutely drive a better experience at a lower cost, and I think customers expect both of those things.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. I think that's really insightful. I can't believe we only have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to try and squeeze in a couple of questions here from the audience. This one's interesting, and I think it's something Gary, perhaps we'll kick off with you. When you work with insurance companies or you know, companies in general around their automation strategy, how much of it is on the back office and how much of it is on the front end? So thinking about improving the employee experience and improving the customer experience, and how does one kind of tie into the other?
Yeah, it's a great question. We find most organizations, when they're starting the journey, they actually go to the back office because they think it's the things that they're most comfortable and familiar with. We find, though, that the bigger value add stuff actually comes out of the front office because, you know, to Martha's point just a moment ago, right, it's the customer-led discussion, right? What are we actually doing to improve our customers' experience, make us far more sticky for them? So those programs that are probably maybe mid-journey are doing a bit of both, going out of the back office and moving to the mid and front office. And they're finding as they've gone through that journey, that's where a lot more of the treasure is buried for them.
Yeah, interesting. Martha, any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that it is important. I'll just add to think about this through the eyes of the associate. I mean, I believe strongly that we have to, you know, make the process easier for associates to deliver. That we reduce, someone said earlier, you know, reduce a lot of minor tasks and administrative tasks, make room for time to, you know, demonstrate empathy and work through this and help a customer is so important. And we have to build ways to do that, to make it easier for our associates to do good work and to do the right work and put their skills to work on things that really make a difference for the customer and not just a bunch of administrative tasks that need to get done. So automating those things, I think, are really important. And I think that's one of the ways that we're balancing, you know, making sure we meet the needs of the associates and they have the tools and equipment to do their jobs efficiently and feel good about that. It is have made a lot of progress at Nationwide in that regard, and I think we will continue to focus on what associates need. I think Tom makes a good point about, or Gary, sorry, on the point about the ease of going straight to the back office. It seems kind of behind the scenes, and I certainly would say we did some of that, but you have to rapidly move, and we certainly are there now, to things that are you know, customer facing, because you have to find ways to deliver that better experience at a lower cost, not just to automate a bunch of behind the scenes stuff. You're not going to improve your customer experience that way.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Tom, anything you would like to add?
No, I think everyone's made the same points I would make. I think it's
Yeah.
well answered question.
Very good. Got time for a couple more. So I think this is a question that I think I've encountered a number of times in the past, but I wonder if it's changing kind of as we move into 2021. How is, you know, as carrier organizations, how are you partnering, or you know, what's the strategy or workflow around partnering with insurtechs or technology firms, and is that changing? I mean, do you have a central innovation group, or does each division kind of handle that type of thing themselves, claims, underwriting, etc.? Tom, I'll let you kick off with that.
Yeah, but we're a relatively small company, so we don't have an organized effort. Although I will say that our head of claims, our head of sales, our head of underwriting, myself, we all kind of keep an eye out of what's out there in the InsurTech world and the innovation world. I mean, before InsurTech Connect became a fiasco, we'd all go and share stories and meet people and kind of meet people together, which I think was key because. My challenge with a lot of InsurTechs, and I don't want to, cast a blanket on all of them, is, that they have developed a solution to a problem that they think is prevalent. Their supporters, their financiers, their venture capital supporters are all, focused on them monetizing that idea. And I have found that a lot of them are not terribly flexible in wanting to, adjust their solution to the problem at hand in my instance or anyone's specific instance. Now, I mean, Martha mentioned some of the firms that like Hover that they've partnered with, and those are specific solutions that have a lot of value to a very specific need of personal lines insurers. But I have found in my space that a lot of them, they aren't willing to kind of adjust their approach to meet my needs. And so therefore there's not a whole lot of stuff to talk about sometimes because we don't have, unfortunately, a huge, the research group, the innovation team and things like that the larger firms can afford. So we've partnered with a few, but been very selective and found those that are willing to kind of meet us halfway and say, okay, great, well, let's apply our technology, but customize it in the sense so that it fits your solution and your needs.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Tom. Martha, anything to add from Nationwide's point of view there?
I would just say that I could spend full time talking to folks that have the innovative solution that I desperately need. And it's a challenge, right, to figure out how to mire through that. So what I would say is important is two things. One is that you clearly define as a business, not some central function, but as a business, what do you need? And what is needed in your process and what will truly add value, and then look for those solutions. I think that then, doing a broader look at who has those types of capabilities that could help you would make sense. I think the risk there is that you miss out on something you're not thinking about or you've not spotted as a need. And so I think that's where the innovation team can come in. And we do have a centralized innovation team, and they are constantly looking at what else is out there and challenging us on what that capability could be, or investing in it, and we learn along the way. So I think it's a multi-front approach and a spot where figuring out what you need, it can be tough because there are so many solutions available.
Yep, absolutely. Gary, I'm sure this is something you face on a regular basis. I mean, how do you partner more effectively with carriers and companies within the industry?
Yeah, to my mind, Chris, and I think, this ties back a little bit to, can you partner with InsurTech, right? As well as what's the broader ecosystem even beyond that. One of the things that our view consists of is that InsurTechs have a great reach and acquisition. It's kind of like the fast food example. Do you want fries with that? Do you want insurance with that? We see that potentially being an opportunity area for the mainline traditional insurers, maybe to expand reach if they can, to Tom's point, can they come to an agreement in a support methodology where the InsurTech would be supporting the mainline insurer in a standardized format for them to accept. So there is, we think, opportunity there. Again, I think that when I consider just the general part of the partner ecosystem and what you can create to add value around it, one of the elements that we bring to the equation is, if it's a systems integration component to it, that we can deliver a lot on that front by actually enabling a traditional insurer, for example, with access into systems from other partners, right? That digital laborer actually becomes almost an ETL, right? A type of a system to integrate in and burrow in and share information. But that's talking at a much deeper relationship, probably that's you know, C-suite to C-suite.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Oh my goodness, we are out of time, and we did have some other questions to get to, and perhaps this is a good reason to reconvene at a future date to keep the conversation going. It's been terrific. Tom, Gary, Martha, thank you so much for joining. To the listeners, thank you, everybody. I think we learned a lot today, right? Thinking agile. Getting people in the room. You know, this is a cultural shift for a lot of organizations, and I think it has to be a journey that the entire company is on board with. People, process, technology, and data. You know, they all play a critical role in this journey. You can't really have one without the other. And I think it's challenging to scale compassion. I think compassion is something that has to be delivered on a person by person basis, and we can scale the other stuff, but we need to, you know, keep on focusing on building solutions that deliver compassion and empathy to the industry. So again, thanks everybody, and take care.
Thanks,
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, cheers.